Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee and Sports in the Morning. I am the NFL genius sitting in from a man, no better, Mo Better. And to my left, he's not guarding the two. He's from the N1 podcast. He's from the Meaty Boys podcast. The guy is working round the clock, a mainstay on Coffee and Sports Friday mornings. Guardy 3.
What's up, guys? Thank you for joining us this morning. Definitely looking forward to talking some sports.
What's up, brother? What's up, brother? I'm a little sketch this morning. I'm in a great mood. I'm in a fired up mood. My team is hosting a home playoff game to go to the Super Bowl. We will talk about that. The Philadelphia Eagles played in the Snow Bowl yesterday, and we're going to get into that. We'll talk about the Ravens-Bills, and do you blame Lamar? Is it fair to put the emphasis on Lamar? Do you think Lamar had a better football game than Josh Allen? And then we're going to talk about, obviously, we'll talk about the biggest upset of the weekend, the Washington Commanders. Man, do I have pie on my face. I was the one that went basically almost viral on TikTok saying that the Commanders have no chance of winning this football game. And guess what? They won the football game. They beat the Detroit Lions in Detroit. Jaden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury deserve a ton of credit for that win. We'll talk about that. But we got to start in Kansas City. And how other ways to start in Kansas City than the 1 seed? I mean, Brett, I'm not trying to be this guy, but was it not exactly what we've seen all year from Kansas City? It was ugly. There's excuses. There's ref foul play. There's conversations about if the defense is just carrying the team. Why does the offense not look as good? But like they've done in 15 other games, they leave with a win and a decisive win. The game wasn't the Chiefs ended that football game. That game, it was close, I guess, but at the end, there was no doubt who won the football game. One thing Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid have done throughout their career is win football games. Rain, sleet, or snow, ugly, clean, it doesn't matter. They won the football game. Brett, your thoughts on the Chiefs versus the Texans opening up the divisional round?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought that was a game that the Chiefs, I think they pretty decisively won. The scoreboard made it seem close, but the Chiefs never really seemed to lose control of the game. Just consistently stayed ahead of schedule. And, I know that a lot of people are going to be like, the refs this, the refs that. But in all reality, it almost kind of gave the same vibe as Packers and Eagles from last weekend, right? The Texans also beat themselves. Let's not leave, that part out. Missed field goals, 15-yard penalties. Even if you think they're controversial, we know they can't, go near the head of Mahomes. Like, I didn't agree with some of those calls, but at the end of the day, the Texans had to play a clean, perfect game for 4 quarters, which is exactly what you have to do against the Chiefs, and they failed to do so. It's one of those games where it was a fun game for the most part, but the Chiefs, they never seem to lose control, and Travis Kelce is in his late stage Jason Witten era of his career, but he still got it. He somehow is always open, even though he looks like he's moving slower than everybody out there.
It's funny you say that. The Chiefs basically ended that football game. They were up 11. They blocked the field goal, and then they ran out of bounds for that safety at the end of the game. They ended the game with the ball up 11. So you're right. Missed field goals, that definitely hurt Houston. Not being able to put the ball in the end zone hurt Houston. A couple untimely penalties that I didn't agree with either one hurt Houston. I'll say this, right? And this is a nice way to say it. I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes isn't the benefactor of calls. He is 100% the benefactor of calls. Both those calls were atrocious, in my opinion.
Agreed.
But I don't need him to be flopping on the sideline. I lost a shred of respect for Patrick when he slowed down on the sideline and then intentionally fell to try to draw the extra penalty on the sideline. And credit to the refs there for not calling that one. But I don't need him to do that, right? You look at And it's funny because Tom did it and, Peyton did it, where they would always look to the official. And you got this. Like when you're a winning quarterback, when you're the face of the league, when you're the face of a franchise, when you're Patrick Mahomes, you're going to get extra calls. Michael Jordan got extra calls. LeBron James gets extra calls. Just putting it to a different sport. Even in hockey, you couldn't take down Wayne Gretzky. You weren't allowed to. You took him down, you were in the penalty box. That's the golden goose. You don't take the goose out. I'll give this a different thought process. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Key. Appreciate you guys. I'll give this a different thought process. Do you remember, in boxing or in UFC, when they say to be the champ, you got to what, Brett?
Say you got to beat the champ.
And that's exactly the way it is in the NFL. To be the best, you got to beat the best. And to beat the best, you got to do it decisively. There's not going to be any questionable calls over here. Questionable calls for them, but you're not going to be the benefactor of that. You got to take it to them. I bring you back to when the Buffalo Bills played the Kansas City Chiefs in Buffalo in the regular season. 4th down and 2. Do they kick a field goal? Do they kick a field goal to go up 5 points and hope that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs don't beat them? Or do they go for the touchdown to go up 9 and win the football game? And in order to win the football game, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen were like, screw this. We're not kicking another field goal, watching another PI, watching the end of another Chiefs game where Patrick Mahomes has the ball, or we're not doing that, right? We're going to win the football game. And that's what they did. They ran the ball on 4th down. They scored a touchdown. C.J. Stroud and the Texans didn't do that. And there's nothing, nothing to be, nothing to leave your head out. The Texans defense played great. The run game was awesome. Kylie Fairbairn needs to learn how to kick in cold weather. That's not going to work for you in the future. It's the reason why kickers like Justin Tucker and Harrison Buckner are so important in these playoff runs. Even Tyler Bass from Buffalo kicked like almost a 50-yard field goal yesterday for Buffalo in that weather. Good kickers find a way to get it done in those situations. Fairmare didn't. The Houston Texans didn't. What were your thoughts on the locker room afterwards? Will Anderson, a lot of Texans players basically, I don't say blame the refs. They said, we knew what we were getting into. We knew we weren't going to get any calls, and alluded to that. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, they I did see they almost like alluded to, being against Chiefs versus the refs, and I thought that was a little almost a little disingenuous, because it almost feels like they were kind of looking for a reason to not blame themselves for this loss. Like you just said, if you want to beat the Chiefs, you have to do it decisively. You have to go for the throat every chance you get. And they didn't. There's just a lot of bad mental mistakes. Like I said, I didn't agree with any of the either of the roughing the passer calls. I thought they were too much. But at the end of the day, the 30 yards, it hurts. The Chiefs continued momentum, but you still had your chances and you weren't able to take advantage. And that's just something that they'll have to, learn and bounce back from. And now in the future, the other problem with that, though, is you're coming after the refs. Do you think that they're going to be very friendly now in the future? Do you think you're going to get a lot of calls in the future? Probably not. So I think this could work against them in multiple ways.
100%. And if the 4:30 game was chips and salsa, if it was the appetizer to the main event Saturday night, that main event was like a steak, filet mignon, prime rib. It was potatoes on the side. You even got a little ice cream at the end. That Saturday night football game had my jaw dropped the entire football game. I gotta stop. I know there's a lot of Commanders fans that are beating me up on TikTok because of my clip. And first of all, by all means, you should beat me up because of that clip. If you don't know, I said there's no chance the Commanders win this football game. This game reminds me of Any Given Sunday. The week after they win, they get beat 38-4, and not 4, but it's a joke. But and no one talked about that game. That's what I thought this game would be. And from the first drive, the Commanders hung with the Lions the entire football game. Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels were incredible in this game. Cliff Kingsbury I've been very critical of in the past, especially when he was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. But what they were running was, okay, if you're going to run man and you put 3 people on the outside, we are going to run the football up the middle with a read option with Brian Robinson or Jaden Daniels. And if you're playing zone where you have 1 guy on the outside, we're going to throw it out to Terry McLaurin and we're going to allow him to run on a bubble screen. And they were Detroit's like, we can't run man because we're short on players, so we're going to run zone. And Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury it was rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It was the same formation. It was trips left, trips right, running back, shotgun. Every play. I say every play, but like they ran that maybe 15, 20 times in that football game to where they either ran the ball with Jaden Daniels, he kept it on the keeper, they ran it with Robinson or Eckler, or they threw a bubble screen out to De'Ami Brown or Terry McLaurin. Your thoughts on that football game? I got to give Cliff his credit. Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels, incredible football game for them guys. Jaden Daniels ran the ball 16 times. Brian Robinson, 15. They ran the ball for 182 yards and 3 touchdowns and threw the ball for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. De'Ami Brown had, I go back to the Amon-Ra St. Brown comment about De'Ami Brown. He's like, I'm going to remember him. And I don't even know if he catches the ball. Does he even play? De'Ami Brown was one of the best players for the Commanders that game. If you're a Lions fan, how do you feel? How did you feel about the game plan? Let's start there.
I thought it was great. I thought, the game was, kind of changed for the Lions early on. Robertson went down early. He's one of their last, few healthy cornerbacks. As soon as that happened, it's like, oh, they're kind of just having to sit in the zone and play soft. And, credit to Cliff and Jaden, like you said, they kind of just I think the big thing that they didn't do, they didn't complicate things. They made it simple. They ran this very simple yet effective game plan. They're going to sit in the zone. We're going to use Jaden Daniels' elite accuracy to just dice it up with just nothing. They didn't do anything complicated. It was all just very simple reads. So I love it. I love the game plan. And the Commanders' blueprint to win was turn this game into a track meet. Don't let the Lions drag you into a physical, long game in the trenches because that's how they were going to win. The Commanders just kind of established the pass and the run early, but more importantly, they were putting 7 on the board, putting the pressure on the Lions. And when the Lions made mistakes, when Jared Goff threw some very bad picks, they capitalized on it. So all the credit in the world to what the Commanders did. They came out and punched the Lions early and often, and eventually they just couldn't get back up.
Brett, 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions and a fumble. And then 2 of those interceptions were really good plays by the Washington cornerbacks to just jump the route. I look back at that deep post he threw to Jameson Williams. Part of me believes that Jameson Williams needs to be able to box out the receiver there. I don't know if that pick is completely on Jared Goff. He gave his receiver the chance. Time was running out in the first half. The fumble, and by the way, I do want to get into this. Frankie Louvu is a dirty friggin' player. The same Frankie Louvu who dove on Jalen Hurts' head and didn't get called for a penalty, didn't get called for a penalty headhunting Jared Goff on that interception. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for the NFL to allow this guy to keep headhunting quarterbacks. He needs to have a check sent to the NFL this week. I'm almost guaranteeing that's going to happen. But Philadelphia needs to watch out for this guy. He's literally, it reminds me of the old Saints days where they're putting bounties on these quarterbacks, and Frankie Louvu's looking for bonuses in his check. The guy's a dirtball. Should be clear there. But I want to touch on this Commanders defense because you look at what Dan Quinn has done with this group. It's a bunch of veteran, older players that understand how to play football. Bobby Wagner's past his prime, but he's still a good player. Jeremy Chin, 5th year in the league, former defensive runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Marshawn Lattimore from the New Orleans Saints. Dante Fowler, this guy's been in the league. Jacksonville, Rams. These are the Rams team that went to the Super Bowl. You got so many of these guys that they brought in. Obviously, you have Jonathan Allen, longtime player there. Deron Payne's on that defense. There's a lot of players on that Washington Commanders defense, and Frankie Louvu has been the catalyst. He's been the leader, and he's a sick psychopath, and you have to know where he's at on each play in that football game. Frankie Louvu's a dirty player. You got to keep your eyes on him. Your thoughts?
No, I completely agree, because this isn't the first time we've seen him, do kind of stunts like this. So I do think he's a dirty player. He's very good. He's very good. He makes an impact in every game, for better or worse. But no, this is a defense that I completely overlooked at the beginning of the year, because there didn't seem like they really had anybody. They had a lot of good guys that were very past their prime, but they've heated up at the right time. They've really gelled down the stretch. Dan Quinn has this team ready to go. So I got to give him credit. I did not think this defense would be as good as it has been so far. So to see what they've done, especially in these last couple weeks, has been absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to an NFC Championship game where they travel to Philadelphia. We'll talk about that, but let's finish out in the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, team that won, what they won? They're 15-2. 15 football games this year. Number 1 seed. Was it injuries, or do you think that this team just met their match? Detroit, how do you remember this Detroit Lions season? Do you remember it as the record-breaking season for them? Most wins in franchise history, and being the 1 seed and hosting a home playoff game. I don't remember the last time the Detroit Lions were the 1 seed. I don't know if they ever were the 1 seed. Or do you remember it as them losing in the first round of the playoffs?
So, you can start with the regular season, because I don't think, you can't take their 15-win season away from them. They were absolutely fantastic all year, so got to give them credit where credit's due there. When it comes to the playoffs, it's weird, right? Because it feels like they still should have won the game. They had 16 guys on injured reserve, but it still almost feels like that they should have won. But the problem is they are elite almost everywhere on that football field except for one spot, and that's quarterback. I think there's a limited shelf life on what you can do with Jared Goff. I think there's a reason why Ben Johnson goes to trick play so often. He knows there's limitations to, Jared Goff and what he, brings to the table. And I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but if you have to put the game on Jared Goff and tell him to go win it, he's not going to be able to do it. We've seen that in the past. His best years are with the Rams when he has Todd Gurley, but when Todd Gurley got shut down in the Super Bowl, the entire offense fell apart. And we saw that again when the Commanders really locked in to stop the run. They almost just kind of patiently waited, knowing our chance is going to come. And sure enough, Goff made some crucial mistakes that, took the Lions out of this football game. Unfortunately, I think the Lions are still an elite team. But if they want to reach this next level, if they want to win the Super Bowl, they're going to need more out of Jared Goff, and they got to ask themselves how can they take Jared Goff to the next level, and that's going to be interesting considering obviously Ben Johnson's probably gone this offseason. I don't see him being there next year, so I think they can't take away the regular season, but I think they got to figure out how to get some more out of their quarterback.
They were just talking. There's multiple reports that came out that Ben Johnson addressed the team after the game saying that he won't be back. He's taking a head coaching job. A lot of people are speculating that could be the Las Vegas Raiders, but we'll see what ends up happening this offseason, and we'll see if Ben Johnson is back. But I will say this: Aaron Glenn did himself no favors in this football game. It was very obvious that Cliff Kingsbury out-schemed Aaron Glenn. But I don't want to beat him up too much. They were missing a lot of players, but with that being said, it seemed as if Detroit never changed their mentality. We are going to blitz, 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 blitz. And as much as Jaden Daniels and the Commanders were beating that blitz, one of the keys of the game was when they blitzed and they gave Terry McLaurin a 3-on-1, 2 blockers, and Terry McLaurin on the outside. And you're not going to catch him. It's one of the biggest touchdowns of the game. The Lions had just scored. They made a three-point game, and then that happened. Just can't let that happen. But let's move on. Let's move on to the next game. And, God, I'll tell you right now, I've been waiting to get into this game. The Philadelphia Eagles versus the Los Angeles Rams. I'll tell you this, right? As a non-Eagles fan, I'm sure you probably loved the way Jared Verse handled himself. He went into Lincoln Financial Field. He talked all that smack about Philadelphia. He did the thumbs down. He played his ass off for the Rams. But as an Eagles fan, man, I was hoping anyone would, line him up and knock him on his ass. Jalen Carter, before the football game, he was, taunting the fans. And Jalen Carter walked up to him and was just like, yo, dude, like, you need to knock that shit out. Like, you need to not do that. And they got into a little conversation. And I think they said, do you want to bet something on the football game? I don't know if that was what said. He goes, no, I'll take the $77,000 game check I'm going to get next week when I'm playing next round, is what Jared Verse said to Jalen Carter. Jared Verse played like that, right? Played great in this football game. The snow, Jalen Hurts still doesn't seem absolutely right. But 2 things I came away from that game from an Eagles perspective is, one, that defense is elite. That defense is elite. Causing turnovers, Jalen Carter with 2 of the biggest plays of the game. The punch-out fumbles got to be the biggest play for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then the second biggest play is the sack on 3rd and 2. I don't know how the interior of that Rams offensive line allows Jalen Carter a free rush at Matt Stafford. That can't happen if you're an LA Ram. It felt like they had all the momentum in the world. 3rd and 2 on the Eagles' 18-yard line to win the football game. And you allow, I could arguably say the best defensive tackle in football, a free run at the quarterback. That can't happen. We'll get into Saquon Barkley in a minute, but let's talk about the defensive battle between Jared Verse and Jalen Carter and your thoughts.
Yeah, and I thought both Verse and Carter played great. I thought they were both, very impactful for their respective teams. The Rams defense was able to get home on, Jalen Hurts a lot more than I thought they would. I think they had 7 sacks?
Yeah.
I did not expect that to happen. And, Jalen Carter, when the chips were down, because it felt like the Rams had the momentum. It almost felt like they were about to rip this game away.
Yep.
Especially you're watching that, after the Puka Nacua catch on the sidelines over Slay, you're like, oh, they're about to do this, aren't they? Here comes Carter with the biggest play of the game, sack on 3rd down. So both guys were just absolutely incredible. I thought both defenses played well, but the problem with the Rams is we saw this already once. They were just no match for the run game. Run blocking, the Eagles' offensive line just absolutely dominated that front in the first game. And when they needed yards, they went back to it. They were able to just dominate them again and run on the run blocking. So overall, I thought both defenses played well. There's just a very clear advantage when it came to the Eagles versus the Rams lines in the run game, and that was the difference.
I actually think the big difference was, and obviously the run game, the Eagles ran the ball 34 times for 285 yards at 8.4 yards per carry. Jalen Hurts, 7 for 70. But after he got hurt, I'll say this, right? Hurts took 7 sacks in that football game. After he got his knee rolled up on, he was immobile. And I don't think he knows how to play football when he's immobile. In my mind, I'm thinking like, hey, are they going to make a move to Kenny Pickett here? Like, are we going to see a different quarterback in there? Because he can't move. And if he can't move, I don't know how much I want Jalen Hurts back there. He was a sitting duck. That safety, when they got that safety to make it 16-15, they were 1 point down and getting the football. I said to my guy I was watching the game with, I'm like, the Eagles are going to lose this football game. They're going to lose this football game. They punt the ball back to the Rams. Great punt, by the way. Free kick, sorry. It's not a punt anymore. It's a free kick, which is so odd. It's so tough watching the new rule NFL. But listen, he had a really rough day with extra points. But kicking the ball off, got to give all the credit in the world because Jake Elliott destroyed that football and put it where it needed to get put as far as kicking it off. And then Jalen Carter punching the ball out. Isaiah Rodgers in for Quinyon Mitchell, who got hurt in the first quarter, runs that ball back to the 8-yard line, puts the Eagles up 4 points because they don't. And the Eagles made so many mistakes in this game. A.J. Brown dropped a touchdown. Lane Johnson jumped off sides on the tush-push touchdown. The Eagles left so many points on the board. 2 huge sacks to take them out of field goal range. I felt like the Eagles made a lot more mistakes and played one of their worst football games they could possibly play. But Saquon Barkley and the defense said, no. We are not ready to go home yet. We are not ready to go home yet. Give credit where credit's due, man. Philadelphia Eagles defense and offense running game has stepped up for Philadelphia. Saquon Barkley, every time you watch him break away for a 70-yard touchdown, all I think of, I got a friend that's a Giants fan. He texted me last night. I want to read it. Sorry, Brett. I hate to do this to you.
Oh, you're all good.
No. Brett Anchor is his name. But he literally texted me after after he breaks the 70-yard touchdown to make it a 2-score game. He goes, I hate John Mara and Joe Schoen so much. And I'm like, I get it. He goes, the fact that he kept his job after that and Daniel Jones astounds me. But I thought that was hilarious. I thought it was very funny. But once again, Rams had the opportunity to win the football game. Eagles defense stepped up. 2 big plays. Sacked by Jalen Carter, which was it. You cannot allow that. You cannot allow that to happen. And then the incomplete pass on 4th down. That was it. Philadelphia Eagles won this football game. They're going to host the Washington Commanders. We'll talk about that later on in the week. We got another football game to recap. And that was the main event of the evening. Now, yesterday, I don't know. I felt like there was 2 main events. You had the Snow Bowl. It was a great football game. I felt like everybody was locked in the Eagles-Rams. And then the night game, you had Buffalo versus Lamar and Baltimore. And I said this before the game. I said this on sideline to sideline. And I'll bring it up to you again, Brett. I felt like they overlooked James Cook. And looking at that football game, Derrick Henry and James Cook had very similar stats. James Cook had 82 total yards. Derrick Henry had 84 total yards. I felt like this game was won off the mistakes of Baltimore. This is going to sound nuts, and people might be annoyed at me for saying this. I said on Thursday, I'll make my decision on who the 3rd best quarterback in football is based off this football game. I don't know if I can do that yet. Watching that game, if you take away the 2 turnovers that Lamar Jackson had, Lamar Jackson had a much better football game than Josh Allen. People just won't admit that, right? History is written by the victors. It's written by the people that win the football game. You watch that football game, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and all I ask you to do is to delete the 2 turnover plays and compare play between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. What did you think?
It's funny because I think you can even leave him in there, and I still say that Lamar Jackson was the better quarterback that night.
Yeah,
he recovered very nicely. He had the 2 first half turnovers, but you can even see it. You can almost argue that last drive of the game kind of showed you who the better quarterback was on that night. He didn't let the mistakes get to him. He was calm, composed, and he made plays when he absolutely needed to. So that was a situation where I thought Josh Allen did what he had to, played mistake-free football, and he made plays when they desperately needed it to put just enough points on the board. And last night, I think Lamar Jackson was the better quarterback, even with the 2 turnovers.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying it that way. I want to read this to you because I think that a lot of listeners, especially some guys that are on our show, and I'll have a ton of conversation with Matt Godfrey on Thursday, but I want to read this to you. Second half, it's 21-10 Buffalo. Buffalo gets the ball out of the break. Buffalo's possessions in the second half. Punt, field goal, kneel. Right?
Yeah.
Baltimore's possessions in the second half. Field goal that was hampered by a penalty. Touchdown, fumble by Mark Andrews. Touchdown, drop 2-point conversion by Mark Andrews.
Yeah, say unfortunately for the Ravens, when you decide to play this run-heavy style of offense like we saw with both teams, it's going to kind of limit your chances sometimes if you want to come back. So those turnovers just absolutely killed them because let's be like, if we're being honest with ourselves, right? If you just look at the stats, it completely just looked like the Ravens outplayed the Bills. They had 140 extra yards on them. They dominated the ground game. They were much more efficient in the pass game. They were average 8 yards per play to the Bills 5, I think it was. But if you're going to turn the ball over, and I know a lot of guys are going to say well, they didn't score off the interception, so it doesn't matter. But it does, because that still burned 3.5 minutes off the clock that the Ravens absolutely could have used, right? So I thought the Ravens played actually a lot better than, what the scoreboard suggests.
Yep.
They just couldn't get out of their own way, and that was their undoing.
I also thought one of the things that they did chasing points was a huge mistake. They ran the ball 5 straight plays for a touchdown on their one drive, and then on the 2-point conversion, they drop Lamar back, and the ball gets batted down by Matt Milano. And in my mind, I'm like, you guys are bullying the line of scrimmage. Why not run a read option with Lamar and Derrick Henry and let one of those guys run the ball for 3 yards? Was I the only one that thought that was confusing? I could pull that drive chart up really quick. It's not a hard one.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a run all the way, but then as soon as you drop back, I was really lost.
Here it is. I got it right here. 6-yard run, 3-yard run, 17-yard run, 12-yard pass, 22-yard run, 15-yard run, 5-yard touchdown. Run. Isaiah Likely incomplete pass on the 2-point conversion. That's 6 runs, 1 pass for 80 yards. What? Why did we not run the football there? Because if they make that 2-point conversion there, they're not chasing points. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree when it came to that situation. I thought they were running all the way. They were just completely overwhelming Buffalo on that drive at the line. So personally, I thought the RPO was coming, and when he dropped back, and I was kind of really lost. Why are we doing this? That doesn't even really make sense to me. But so I completely agree. I thought that 2-point conversion had to be a run. Hell, just line up heavy and give it to Derrick Henry. They showed they're not going to stop him for 3 yards, but they went that different route, and it just completely cost them in the end.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I have to go. I have to get in the work. My man Brett Gardy 3 is going to take over from here. But I am looking forward to talking more sports with you guys this week. We're going to have Sideline to Sideline Thursday night, Wire to Wire Wednesday night, Birds Deep, another edition talking about the Eagles Thursday night, Coffee and Sports tomorrow morning. And if you're not just a football fan, you're going to get Meaty Boys. You're going to get Ant1 Podcast. You're going to get all these podcasts this week at Wire to Wire Network. I appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to me today. I'm going to leave it to Brett Gardy 3. He's going to close us down. He's going to give you a little bit more sports talk and then going to close you down. But thank you guys so much for listening this morning. And Gardy 3, it's on to you, brother.
Sounds good.
Take care.
You too. Yeah, so I'll say that was an absolutely fantastic weekend of football that we just got. I'm looking forward to next weekend. Commanders, Eagles should be a fun one. You'll hear definitely more of an in-detail breakdown on Sideline to Sideline, but think the Commanders, if they want to upset the Eagles, they definitely have to try to replicate what they did on against the Lions, and turn that game into a track meet. Don't let it come into a drag out physical game that favors Philly. So, well, we'll talk more about that on Thursday, but I'm looking forward to it. Bills, Chiefs, that's going to be a ton of fun too. I'm completely looking forward and excited to see that game. Can the Bills prevent the three-peat? It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. So I'm looking forward to it. Of course, some NBA news. We learned that Mark Dagnall of the Oklahoma City Thunder, he's going to be the head coach of the All-Star game in the West, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody that's watched the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. They've been absolutely rolling. Anytime they face elite competition, it seems like they just kind of are the ones that dominate. They just blew out the Cavaliers last Tuesday. I love what Oklahoma City's doing. And the scary part is, right, this is an Oklahoma City Thunder team that is doing this without Chet Holmgren, who, before the injury, he looked like that he could give Wemby a run for DPOY. He was that impactful on that end, and I have no doubt that he's going to be as impactful when he returns. But it goes to show just how amazing that the team is built. We have Isaiah Hartenstein has been an absolute blessing for that team. Just a terrific signing. Alex Caruso has been indispensable. Sam Presti, it almost feels like that he did learn from his mistakes. This is a guy that we all know he had a big three earlier, KD, Harden, Russ, and he pressed all of the wrong buttons with that. He brought in guys like Kendrick Perkins. He didn't really surround them with modern spacing. He let James Harden walk. And now it's like we're seeing him now instead just be a lot more calculated with building this Thunder team. And it's just absolutely fantastic. Now he's making sure the guys they bring in, guys like Caruso, iHeart, they all fit and really mesh well with what their star players and, Shea and, to a lesser extent of a star, J-Dub would like to do. So overall, congratulations to Mr. Mark Dagnall for becoming the coach of the All-Star game. I'm sure the other one will end up being Kenny Atkinson, somebody that I really wanted my Bucks to get. But, we went with Doc. That's another story. And that's just another team that's just been absolutely terrific this year. When we looked at the Cleveland Cavaliers before the season started, we all knew that they were going to be a playoff team, but I don't think anybody expected this. The best team in the East, they've looked the part so far. Evan Mobley, I think, deserves a ton of credit. This is a guy that's taken a massive, massive leap. He looks more comfortable shooting the ball. He's doing a much better job punishing mismatches this year, which is something that the Knicks kind of exploited on him last year, was an inability to hunt these mismatches and really just take advantage of them. This year he's doing a much better job at using his size and bullying smaller guys. Donovan Mitchell's been fantastic. And, of course, Darius Garland, he's been great. Him and Mitchell have been playing off of each other a lot better than they did, last year. And they've both been, even though Donovan Mitchell at times looks like he's taken a step back in scoring, he's not scoring as efficiently as he did last year. I think that at the end of the day, he's doing what he has to, which is taking a step back and letting Darius Garland be more involved and just being more comfortable in general in the offense. Hey, what's popping, Chris?
Good morning, Brett. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I was just talking NBA All-Star game. They announced the head coach, or at least one of them, is going to be Mark Dagnut of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I'm guessing the other one's going to be Kenny Atkinson of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So figure I might as well throw that one at you right away.
I mean, is it going to make you actually watch the All-Star game, though?
No.
No. I was talking to Mo about this 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. I think first of all, there is no way to really save, in my opinion, any of these All-Star games. I think, I mean, the NBA has the most appealing thing, I feel. They have the 3-point contest. They have the slam dunk competition. They have things that could potentially make it interesting. I really think what the NBA needs to do is every year there needs to be a highlight. And whatever that one highlight is, do it better than anything else you're going to offer. And that's what you build your All-Star weekend around for that year. So one year, get actual good people in the dunk competition. And that is what the highlight of All-Star weekend is the actual dunk competition. Don't bother having an All-Star game. No one plays in it. No one cares about it. Another year, do something where you have a 2-on-2. Maybe it's, 2 of the girls, 2 of the guys. That's your main event for that year. Because no one watches any of it, especially the actual All-Star games. Now, we'll watch the slam dunk competition if there is a decent person in there. We'll watch the 3-point competition because there's usually decent people in there. But as far as the actual All-Star game goes, no one watches it. Just like no one cares about the NFL and their flag football nonsense. And before it was flag football, it was real football. It looked just like the NBA All-Star game. No one watched that either because nothing is actually going on with it. So for the NBA, and I get it, like you want to, and I actually no, I lie. I don't get it. You can still acknowledge people, right? You can still say you made the NBA All-Star team. You can still say you made a Pro Bowl. You can still give them the accolades. I guess baseball, Brett, is probably the most efficient version of the All-Star game as far as like people actually trying to win and partake. But even baseball has that problem, right? Baseball has it where people are like, I'm a little tired. I want a few days off. So,
yeah, I think the NBA also, at least the NBA would be making a mistake if they didn't try to almost recreate what they did last year with Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry. I think it'd be smart to, bring in some WNBA players for the skill contest. And obviously, we all know what the main event prize should be. I think you can bring back Sabrina. To ask Caitlin Clark how much it would be to get her to participate in the 3-point contest. And, bring in Steph and maybe even bring in Clay. They kind of teased it last year, right? 2v2 Splash Brothers versus Caitlin and Sabrina. They teased it last year. And I would think it's an absolute missed opportunity if they don't find a way to at least bring in Caitlin and Sabrina and, throw in a couple other girls. But I think it'd just be a mistake if they didn't, incorporate the WNBA into the skills competition again, because that was a really entertaining the way they did it last year.
And let that be the main event, because you're going to do that, or you're going to try to do that, and then you're still going to wrap it all up with whatever version of an athletic game that you're going to try to give us, which no one cares about. So I don't get it. Like, capitalize on what works, build your entire weekend around that, have that be the focal point, and then do your little skills competitions around there, because people do find those interesting. I get that. And I think the players find those more interesting as well than the actual game itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wish there was I know, some people are complaining about the new format of the All-Star game that they're trying, but honestly, at this point, it's worth a shot.
Anything is worth a shot because nothing has worked in how many years? Decades at this point.
Yeah.
So, and I get it. It's the new thing probably isn't going to work because at the end of the day, you're fighting an uphill battle. The NBA has turned into a league where it's about players taking time off. It's about players feeling they need a certain amount of rest throughout the season. You're always fighting an uphill battle in these all-star games that happen during the season because you don't want anyone to get hurt. They don't want to get hurt. The teams don't want them to get hurt. The coaches who are coaching these things don't want to be responsible for someone's all-star going down for the entire season. So you're always fighting that uphill battle, but it's just gotten worse in the NBA as we have gone along. And I don't know, maybe at some point the NBA wants to do the All-Star game at the end of the season. Maybe that will be a better turnaround. I don't think it will be. I mean, you see what happened with the NFL in the Pro Bowl. That was at the end of the season, and people just wanted to get to the end of the season. They were like, "We're good. The season's over." And maybe it's something in the NBA where the game itself isn't necessarily the veterans. Maybe they focus on the younger guys. Maybe you can do something with college basketball and some of the younger NBA players. I don't know. But generally speaking, when you look at these all-star events throughout the sports, I think baseball is the one exception, but you see it in baseball as well. The younger guys, whether it's their first or their second, or they haven't done it a lot, or the players who haven't been there before, they're the ones that are kind of like all about the experience. Whereas your stars, if this is their 7th all-star, they're 13, they don't care anymore. They've been there, they've done that. It's great. They're happy that they're getting the accolade. But as far as the actual event goes, no, I don't want it.
Yeah, honestly, I've said that before, and I'll say it again. I would rather see a bench players and true hoopers come out and play a game of 5-on-5 that weekend if the low effort continues, because we all know they always have those guys at the end of the bench that just love the game. Jamal Crawford type players where they're just hooping until they're 50 or 60. Honestly, if the stars don't want to participate, go find people that will. I'm sure you can find a roster of 15 that actually just want to go all out, play hard. Maybe it's all end of bench guys that want to prove to other teams that this is why you should give me a roster spot, more rotation minutes, and that a big $500,000 bonus all of a sudden means the world to them because they're making the minimum.
Because it actually means something.
So yeah, it's exactly. So I would not mind if they decided to just maybe eventually go, okay, if you don't want to play, here you go. Here's a whole lineup of bench players that are actually going to try. That would be more fun to me after a certain point.
I mean, Brett, at this point, a game of horse would be more entertaining than the NBA All-Star game. I would much rather watch Steph and LeBron and name after name just sit around and play horse because that would have more entertaining moments to me than watching, an entire game of people just not playing defense and people just dunking, and it's not entertaining.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do want to ask you real quick, kind of shifting from the All-Star game. What do you think of this whole Jimmy Butler saga? Because he gets suspended for 7 games, and then he's back. He plays on Friday. Says, "I love being back out there with the guys. My beef isn't with them." Do you think he gets moved by the trade deadline, or do you think they hold on to him till the end of the year?
I think the suspension was more of a cut your crap. It was we all know the situation. We all know that you are not going to be here until you retire. We all know that you are going to eventually play somewhere else, and we all know that you're not particularly happy where you currently are. That being said, you're not going to go into post-game interviews and talk about how you've lost the love for the game or try to attribute that you being a member of the Miami Heat is the why you don't have passion for basketball anymore, you're not going to do that crap. And if you keep doing that crap, you're going to keep being a member of the Miami Heat, and you're not going to play basketball. So I think that was more of a knock it off. They checked him and said, listen, maybe we'll move you, maybe we won't. That's an us decision to make. But while you're here, you are going to represent this franchise appropriately. And I'm sure he did love being back out there. And I agree with him. His issue isn't with the guys on the floor. It's with the guys in the front office. He probably wishes he was already moved. I'm sure he's expressed to them where he would like to go. But Brett, you know this. The Miami Heat are an organization where they'll say, great, we hear you. We'll do what's best for us. Because what we're not going to do is we're not going to be all over the tabloids about how we made a terrible deal. We are not going to be in a situation where, someone says, oh, we got fleeced and, we got 2 bags of chips and they got Jimmy Butler. We're not going to do that. We're going to put ourselves in the best position to be successful with or without you. And if we decide that there is a deal to be made to move you, then we'll move you. Until then, you're going to do what we need you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we've seen in the past with them that hardballing them doesn't work. We've seen the reports that LeBron James has tried to hardball him, and that is peak LeBron James, clear-cut best player in the league at the time. They didn't let that happen. Wade tried to hardball him and kind of bully him a little in free agency in 2015, and they told him, "Go ahead, go to Chicago, knock yourself out." It's a very tough front office to crack. I know the reports are Jimmy wants to go to the Suns because, let's be real, it's because he knows that new owner, he'll be willing to pay him the max. He'll give him money real quick. But I don't see that happening, just because in order to make that happen, they have to move Bradley Beal, and the Suns are not going to take on that contract for Jimmy Butler. And with him having a no trade clause, finding a third team that Bradley Beal actually wants to go to, because he has the power to just be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So trying to find that third team to make the trade work is just insanely impossible, because there's not going to be at least a good team or a contender that's jumping at the chance to acquire Beal. That's just not going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see when the deadline comes up to see if he gets moved or not.
And let's not forget, and I think people get lost in this a little bit because, he is a good player, but Jimmy Butler is going on 36 years old. Like, this isn't, 30-year-old Jimmy Butler. So you also have to keep in mind this is an aging player. I'm not saying that he has no value. I'm not saying that his skills are completely diminished. But when you're talking about making trades and you're talking about making moves, it's very hard when the other side's like, well, he is going to be 36 this fall. I mean, you can't be like, okay, yes, but I mean, it's not LeBron. All right. Age matters to most people. So when you're looking at the future of Jimmy Butler in the NBA, you can't completely discount the fact that he turns 36 this year. That's part of the situation that the Heat are dealing with. So, and that's part of the situation that Jimmy Butler is dealing with. He may not feel 36. He may not think he's playing like he's 36, but he's almost 36, Brett. And we know that Father Time is undefeated, and it will eventually come for LeBron too. He made a deal with the devil or something, and Father Time hasn't come knocking yet, but eventually it will. And Father Time is undefeated. And Jimmy, even though he's a great player right now, the past has told us, Brett, he only has a few years. So I get it. And that's the thing. He wants the max. He wants this. He wants that. He's almost 36 years old.
And I think a lot of people advocating for an extension of Jimmy Butler just kind of forget that part, because a lot of it seems to be rooted in the past. Like, well, he didn't take him to the finals in 2023.
Playoff Jimmy.
But the reality is you have to pay him for what he's going to do for you in the next 2 years. You're not paying the guy off of what he did 2 years ago. And listen, if this was a situation where the market value says he's worth 30, but to thank him, you want to give him 32 or 34. Okay, a couple extra million. That's an acceptable form of, slight overpay. Kind of what you saw with Milwaukee do with Chris Middleton. We slightly overpaid him, but also, like, it was only by a couple million, and that's a deal that can also help facilitate a trade later. So it works out for both sides. Jimmy Butler, you can't just be like, yeah, here's a max, which would be for about, I think, $55.5 million for the next 2 years. You can't just be like, yeah, thank you. Here's a max that's going to completely cripple our books, because if you just fall off a cliff, which we've seen happen with older guys, just throughout any sport. We saw Peyton Manning look great in 2014, then just nosedive in 2015. We've seen it in the NBA too. If you're Miami, you can't take that chance. Otherwise, you're just locking yourself into purgatory where you're too good to actually get a true lottery pick to help you turn your franchise around, but you're not good enough to go anywhere besides an early exit in the play-in.
And if I'm another team, I don't have that loyalty to Jimmy Butler. Like, I might respect him as a player, but it would only be Miami that would overpay him a little bit out of respect for what he's done for the franchise. If I'm, Phoenix or any other team that's taking Jimmy Butler on and I'm their general manager, I might acknowledge that he's a great player, or he was a great player. He's done great things in the league, but I'm not sitting here like, well, you did such great things with Miami. I want to give you a little extra. I don't care. It's great. I'm glad you did great things in Miami. You've done nothing here, because I got to deal with the next, like you said, the next 2 or 3 years of what you're going to do. So I'm going to pay you for what I project you're going to be worth for the next 2 or 3 years. Miami can pay you for what you've done. Miami can give you the, well, you've been so great to us kind of thing, which obviously that's not going to happen. But wherever he goes next, whether it be in a trade and he's looking for an extension, or he hits free agency, and I don't know, does he still want to go to Brooklyn? Is that still like the number 1 team on his list? I have no idea. But if I'm Brooklyn, he wants to go there, great. But you're going to come here at our cost. Like, it isn't going to be, well, he picked us, so we need to get, no. That's how GMs get fired, Brett.
Mm-hmm. And also with the new team, they're going to look at how every single Jimmy Butler tenure has ended.
Right.
Him turning on Miami. Obviously, there's bad blood in Minnesota. Things didn't work well, at the end in Philly, which, I don't blame him for the Philly one, but when almost every single team, it seems, you've burned bridges with, teams are going to notice that, and they're not going to be jumping to pay you at this point. I mean, he'll get paid, but not what he thinks he's worth.
And the NBA is weird. The NBA is, I think, the only sport of the major ones where people get lost in like the value of the player. Like, you look at football, and a 32-year-old wide receiver hits free agency. No one's overpaying that guy. They're all like, well, he's 32. Like, he's basically worthless at this point. Like, and everyone just agrees with it. Everyone's like, he ain't worth $6 million. Like, we ain't giving him 6. He can go somewhere else if he wants 6. You look at Major League Baseball. What did he do? Oh, he hit 12 homers last season? We ain't paying him. He's got nothing left. You look at the NBA, they're like, oh, well, give him the max. Give him the max. He's been a good player. He deserves the max. No one's like, but he's almost 40. Give him the max. If you got the name in basketball, people will be like, well, he deserves it. And it's the only sport that does that. All the other sports, they're like, he ain't worth that money.
Yeah. Say, name value goes hard in basketball for sure. But say that's all I had for us today, Chris. Is there anything you wanted to add before you get up on out of here, sir?
Listen, I really hope, Brett, that Buffalo is feeling good this morning. I hope that their fans are feeling great. I talked about this week 6, whatever week it was that the Bills beat the Chiefs. And I said it's good. It's all going to line up. The Bills fans are going to be pumping out their chests for the rest of the season. They might even go to the AFC Championship this year against the Chiefs. and it's going to end the same way it's ended before. So I hope Buffalo enjoys the next 6 days, and I hope they're really feeling great about beating Lamar and the self-destruction job that the Ravens did yesterday, beating themselves. But we're going to be in the same spot in 6 days that we always are with Josh Allen, and that is Patrick Mahomes back in the Super Bowl and Buffalo being like, oh, we were so close, Brett. We were so close. That's how we're going to do it. Josh Allen is not Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, you know what? I was very respectful to the Lions fans earlier, but they decided after the game to throw shade at Packers fans. And all I have to say to that is, good season, Lions. Don't worry. Winning a title with 15 guys on injured reserve isn't for everybody.
It isn't. And, I get it. Like, especially with a team like the Lions, because they were like the darling pick during the offseason, and then they lived up to the hype during the regular season, and people forgot how bad their defense was going into the playoffs, which ended up being kind of the issue. But I get it. Like, you have these moments, and I think Minnesota is probably a better example. Minnesota had a great season. Doesn't matter. They did nothing in the playoffs. It's those teams that you don't know if they're going to be back the following year, where it kind of hurts a little more. And I think with the Lions, you're almost at that point where you kind of look at it and you go, maybe there's a reason Sean McVay let Jared Goff go. I mean, and I love Jared Goff. I do. But you look at the Lions now, and they have all these weapons. They have a great line. Their defense isn't great, but they got a lot going for them. And then, Jared Goff didn't play well. And you look at some bigger games this season, even though they won some of them, Jared Goff didn't play well. So you know how it is in the NFL, Brett. The tide turns quickly. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go into next season. The Lions are still going to be a favorite to do some things. But if it's another season like this season where they win double-digit games and they don't get there, that Jared Goff welcome mat is going to be worn out very quickly in Detroit. So we'll see. But I will say this, and Baltimore Raven fans are dealing with it this morning. You got to beat Patrick. You got to get to a Super Bowl. And if you're the Ravens or the Bills, you had the fortunate luck of not having to see the Chiefs early. You saw the other team early. So the Bills did their part, right? They beat Lamar Jackson. So everyone in Buffalo this morning is just hammering the horn that Josh Allen's the MVP. We just beat, which by the way, I don't think he is. I don't think he deserves it. I think Lamar should get the MVP. If you're going to give it to Lamar last season, and then he's going to destroy not only his last season numbers, but he's going to do historically things quarterbacks have never done with his numbers this season, you better give it to him. Otherwise, that's just ridiculous. But they beat Lamar. They're feeling great about themselves. We beat the Chiefs in the regular season. That's all great. You better beat them, though, in the AFC Championship game. Because this is where it actually matters, Brett. And I get it. But Chris, it's just one game, a lock. But I see it now. The referees, I don't care. You need to go out there and actually get the job done. All it takes is one, Brett. Josh Allen's got to get Buffalo to one Super Bowl. And he's good. But you got to get to the one. And if you go out there and you lose again to the Chiefs, it doesn't matter what the Chiefs do. The Chiefs can go to the Super Bowl and get stomped out by the Eagles or whoever it is. That don't matter. Patrick is good. They've been to 7 straight AFC Championship games. They've won 3 Super Bowls already. They're going for a 4th. Patrick's good. We're talking about the Bills and Josh Allen. They haven't got to one yet. The Ravens haven't got to one yet. So I get it. Every game is different. Every year is different. Tough breaks. It sucks what happened with Mark Andrews yesterday if you're the Ravens. But at the end of the day, Brett, no one looks back and goes, well, they were so close. If Mark Andrews just didn't drop that ball in the end, no one cares. He didn't get there. And unfortunately, and this is what every quarterback that played in the Tom Brady era had to deal with, You played against someone great. But you know what? Peyton got his. Roethlisberger got his. Even with Brady there, they found a way to get theirs. So what does that say about Lamar and Josh if they can't even get there? That's all I'm saying.
Hey, no, that's absolutely fair enough. I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that game. I know I'm pulling for Buffalo. I'll make that clear right off the bat. I lived in New York for 5 years, so if the Packers aren't in it, then my second team is Buffalo. So I am hoping that they're able to pull it off and make it to the Super Bowl. It'll be I know.
I want to see history.
Yeah, Jay, at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you tomorrow, make sure you catch Chris back here on the morning show, and make sure you can see me tomorrow. You can see me on the Meaty Boys podcast. So we thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for spending your morning with us, and I hope you all have a great day.